Good afternoon. We're just going to give it a few minutes while we let others join. Hope you are all in warmth today. Mike and I are kind of up north and have experienced a little cold, so hopefully you all are staying warm today. Chloe, how are we doing on attendance?
We're looking pretty good. Maybe about 30 more seconds. We'll wait, and then you guys can get started.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I think we'll probably get going. Thank you everyone for joining today. We appreciate you joining the GP year-end webinar. Just a few housekeeping items. Everyone will be muted and cameras are not enabled at this time. So if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section. If you don't see that right now within your teams, it is next to the chat. There should be a Q&A, so you can click on that and then submit any questions that way. We will be covering those at the end of the webinar. So just a few brief introductions. I'm Julie Kunka. I am a customer success manager here at Crestwood. I've been at Crestwood for about 2 years now and just really loved working with my team here at Crestwood, including my esteemed colleague, Mike. Mike is a senior GP consultant and project manager. I'll let Mike introduce himself a little bit more.
Thank you, Julie. I'm also a CPA that was in public accounting for 15 years. And I have done everything from consulting to project managing at Crestwood, and I've gone back to consulting. I like working with the clients and actually doing stuff more sometimes. And I have been on the ERP side, on the software side, for 20 plus years now. So I'm dating myself a little bit. And I have been with Crestwood for 13 years. Mid-November was 13 years. So I've been with Crestwood quite a long time. And I agree with Julie. I enjoy working with our team and our clients. And I will turn it back to Julie to go through some more information.
Awesome, thank you. So for those of you on the call who have not interacted with the Crestwood team as of late or are even new to Crestwood, just wanted to touch on our ethos, really who we are as a company. So Crestwood is an award-winning both Microsoft and Acumatica certified partner. We have been providing innovative technology solutions for over 25 years, and our roots are firmly planted in Dynamics GP, which, having you all join the call today, we know that that's something near and dear to your all heart. But we are just very passionate about working with you all, our clients, to accelerate operational efficiencies. And then really considering our values, they do drive our daily activities. Mike and I, when we engage with our clients and our other teammates, we are very passionate about working smart, doing the right thing for our clients, and then also being collaborative, not only internally here with Crestwood teammates, but with you all, our clients. We know that with the goal of collaborating with you will ultimately deliver results for your business. And focusing on those needs and priorities. As I noted on the previous slide, our roots are firmly planted in GP as a company. It is important to note, though, that while we are firmly rooted in GP, over the last 10 years, Crestwood has really evolved to meet the changing technology, and we've expanded our technology stack to support the growing needs of our clients. And here's just a few of our pictures of our teammates that you may have worked with over the years. We just, again, want to work smart to deliver results for you all, and have fun and be curious to make sure that we're making thoughtful decisions for your all business, and again, collaborating with you to drive those efficiencies. So one of the big things that came out in September from Microsoft is really talking about that product lifecycle. So as of September of this year, Microsoft has aimed for September 30th of 2029 as the end of support for GP. There is a couple more year caveat to the end of security updates through April of 2031. So really, we're just trying to ensure that our clients are protected, having a functional and safe GP on the most current version. And that's really one of the components that we just want to make sure that you're all considering. Knowing your version, ensuring your GP environment is healthy, a lot of you have been on GP for a long time. So is there a lot of data? Do you have 20 years of data that's part of your system? So do we want to create a plan to archive some of that data? Are you on old infrastructure? Do we want to look at how to best support you potentially through in the Crestwood cloud and hosting? So those are some of the really key components thinking about ensuring you have a healthy GP environment. But then also looking at these dates of 2029, we want to make sure that we have a thoughtful off-road or off-ramp from GP for your team. What does 2029 look like for you? We do have the ability to provide solutions and do discovery and demos, should you be interested in looking at something, but that could be 2028, 2027, or even next year. So just being thoughtful, working with your CSM and being able to come up with that plan, that timeline, so that you have the budget to make those decisions and really the buy-in from your entire teams. So just some quick updates. Again, I had mentioned the modern lifecycle. So Microsoft's, they've gone from a 2-version supportability with this new announcement to a 1 version. So essentially, if you were to apply the 18.7 release that came out in October, that would bring you to the modern lifecycle. They're really encouraging an annual update to make sure that you're on the latest version for security. They are releasing features and functionality, so know that it's not something that is completely stagnant. Beyond those tax and year-end updates, they are releasing some features, and Mike will cover those a little bit later. There is a year-end blog that Terry Healy has so kindly been providing to the Dynamics community. So there will be a link provided for you all to understand that. There are a few ISV announcements for 2024. So just knowing for payroll, if you're doing payroll with integrity data or green shades, just to be sure that you have the communicating with your CSM to make sure you're on the most current version and having those service packs for the extended HR for integrity data, and then also being thoughtful about those year-end checklists. Avalara does have solutions regarding your 1099 solutions, and then also looking at some information on E1 for PopDoc, which is the new combination Smart Connect and Smart List. And then McCorma, knowing that McCorma has different updates and being able to utilize the Payment Hub core for all of the GP legacy clients. So there's a lot of different opportunities to update your environment, but also take advantages of additional functionality from McCorma. And then know that Rockton will be having a slight increase starting January 1. But if you have any further questions, please reach out to me or Nick or Heather, your CSM. And then there will be a few other links provided as well, talking through the new features for 18.7, and then also the year-end update from the Microsoft Learn. And like I mentioned, GP is releasing new functionality each year, Microsoft is, and these are just some highlights of some of the new features that they've released with this most recent 18.7 year-end update. Mike will dive deeper into these when I transition over to him, but Just know that there are some new functionalities that are going to be important for you to be aware of, but also take advantage of. All right, Mike, I'm going to transition it over to you now.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. And so there was also, most of the forms on payroll have not changed, except for the back of the ACA instructions. And then the IRS, and we'll talk about it some more, but as of 2023, basically, if you have 10 or more of anything, you need to electronic file, and not all the software does that. With that, I think we're going to hop into, I have a document that'll just summarize and go through what's new in 2024. And Microsoft has been doing this. We have clients that run the gamut from 18.6, which was last year's release, so think GP 2023, all the way back to even, I've seen clients in GP 2010, GP 2013. Only 15, I believe, is supported forward right now, but they have done this and will continue to do this through 2028. They're coming out with new features consistently. Most of them are either corrections of something they know is wrong, or the majority of them are actually from users, the customers, requesting features. And they've done a pretty good job of that. So one of the things with 2024 is you cannot actually mass email reports from a navigation list. So that was just an example of a sales navigation list. And then you can email receivable statements. So if you issue statements to your customers with the multi-currency blank form, you only could, before this change, you could only really use just the blank form. You had no other form. Now you have additional statement templates and forms available. And we can go to the next slide. There's, for those of you with 1099s, you now can check a box, which you see there, to mask the ID. Nowadays, it gets more and more important. And we can go to the next one. A lot of these are quick hits, and there's just an example of the mask in that top one right there. Right, it just shows the last 4 digits. And then you can reprint a payment register, an EFT payment register. That is really good for people that do EFT. So you can reprint that and go to the next one. Historical age trial balance when a voucher has special characters. It would not print, it now prints. And this is a bigger one because I've had a lot of people have issues with this. If you make a change on a vendor class, it will ask you when you make that change, do you want to roll down? A lot of times people are clicking really quick. They've been using GP forever. The default in the first entry used to be yes. And there were times that people made changes they didn't want to make. Then they had to go back, undo that, and then redo the change they wanted to make. Now it actually defaults to no. So if you accidentally hit enter or the next, to move forward, depending how your system's set, whether it's tab or enter, it will now default to no. Next slide, please. They also restrict edit 1099 transaction information by calendar year. So there's now a drop down where you can do this by calendar year to select it. And you could not do that before. There's kind of a picture of the drop down there. So you have some selections that you didn't previously have. And that's, again, if you're editing 1099 information. I believe that's under transactions when you're looking at GP. And if we go to the next one. Payables transaction remit address to display. So you actually can have it display the remit address now, the details for the remit address rather than just the primary address. And there's a little example there. And then we can go to the next one. You can save the remit address details to history. You could not do that before. And there's actually a new table for anybody that's a little more technical that might be on PM 80810, where it actually stores this information. The next item is you can set up credit card payments as check cards. And it was always missing the origination information for the bank. Now it won't be. So that's a good thing for those of you that will look at things from a bank transaction, and that just shows the drop down and how to switch it to originating rather than reporting. And next slide. Email address on doc type display for customer and vendor. So you can enable it so that when you can set up email by document type. That comes in more when you're trying to process and print these, but that'll be very useful. It gives you some more options. And next slide, please. Sales document inquiry changes. So you now have the original number. So besides just the document number, you now have the original number in the sales document inquiry window, which is very helpful because a lot of times people will have the original number and not the actual document number. And if you scroll down just a little bit on that, it just shows you there's an example of part of the order that we went to from the original document number. All right, and then the next one, you can link the SOP print option to the document type. And that's along the lines of what we were looking at before, but that's really good because you can print by a document type now. The next one, the PO delete line action available in PO entry dropdown. So you can actually delete, there's actually a delete row now there in the dropdown on the entry window. You didn't have that before, so it should make it a little quicker to delete if you need to delete a line. And then the next window, please. Payroll monthly deduction maximum. So there's another deduction maximum limit in payroll. You can now add the maximum field for payroll deduction setup or add a monthly maximum for payroll deduction for those of you that have payroll. And when you're processing payroll, the limit hierarchy is pay period, monthly, shared deduction, calendar, fiscal, and lifetime. So it does apply that. The maximum is considered during your computer check calculation. So that's just a little screenshot of that. And next one is, I would have guessed the next thing is they did the same thing with benefits. And it's the same hierarchy. So those are good things that they have some maximum set out there now that you can have. And that there's a hierarchy to it. Next slide, please. And then it's similar to the other, you can now mask ID on payroll 1099 hours. So that's the little check box that's in the bottom right there. And then if you look, I believe that's a 1099 after it with the mask right down at the bottom there at. And there's the mask. It's only got the last 4 digits. All right. And then the last one that they did for, and I know we went over these fast, is just to kind of give you an idea of what's there in 18.7. Workflow email trim trailing zeros. So to continue to improve workflow emails, Now, in addition to using item detail decimals for formatting, the workflow will actually trim trailing zeros. So rather than having 0 point and 5 zeros after it, you'll see down there, right, there's only 2 decimal points. It's trailing any trimming zeros, trimming any trailing zeros, because in the field, in the table, it's actually 5 decimal, regardless of how you set it in GP. So that was a quick run through, and I know we're going fast, but we have a lot of material, and I would encourage you on any of this. If you have questions, reach out to your CSM for any new features. If it's support related, reach out to Crestwood support as well. All right, we can go back to the slide deck, Julie. So we can go to the next slide because that was the updates. There's also fixed asset updates typically at the end of every year, and this is just saying again, there's no changes. Right, we covered some of the other forms like the 1099 forms. Like we'll get to it in a little bit, but the 1099, DIV, MISC for miscellaneous, and NEC did not have form changes. They're the same forms as last year, just with the year change. And then you should also check with your Integrity Data Enhanced Retirement Plan. And then we go to the next slide, Julie. And here's a sample of 2024 as compared to 2023. And basically the forms have not changed. And you can go to the next, that's dividends. The next form's the NEC, right? The only real change is the date on there that we have circled. And then just be careful if you have modified any of these forms in GP, right? You need to have the original form from the update and then modify it. So this is again just showing the miscellaneous has not really changed as well. And the next slide. Okay, this was just a reminder that in 2020, the government said, okay, well, most of the 1099 miscellaneouses really should be 1099 NECs, non-employee compensation. So that's all this really was there for, just to remind people. And we can go to the next slide. All right, here's some filing dates which are important. Right, forms are due to recipients by January 31st, 2025. Paper filings to the IRS, although a lot of it is now electronic for anything more than 10, is due by February 28th of 2025. E-filing is due by March 31st. 1099 NECs due January 31st to the recipients and the IRS. And then again, that was just a note that if it's 10 or more, you need to electronically file. State filing. Check to see if your filing state is combined federal and filing. NEC was added to this in 2021. I don't think Green Chase has changed. They did not have filing directly with the states, but the IRS usually passes it along to the states in program. But you should check. And then, so this was 1099 filing dates. Our next slide, please. Choices to print 1099, NEC, and miscellaneous. So if you're on 18.4 or later, you don't necessarily need to apply the year-end update for the 1099 NEC, but you could use Report Writer to tweak and add the year that's needed, because the forms haven't changed. However, if you do choose to update to 18.7, you should contact your partner ASAP, because it can be anywhere from 2 to 8 hours, and we book fairly quickly. So then it carries over into next year, but those time slots book fairly quickly, And I do, as Julie did, encourage everyone to be up to date on the latest. It is in your best interest, for sure, if you're doing anything with 1099s, payroll, but even otherwise, there have been features. The architecture has changed. It's more able to work with current technology from operating systems and hardware. If you're running 2016 or earlier, it probably is too late to upgrade before the filing, because the upgrade's a little more involved. And then there's a link to green shades there. Also, you could create a smart list builder or designer report to pull the information Excel to import into a 1099 package. Usually it can be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours work if we're helping you. And then the next slide, please. So year-end closing preparation. So year-end, when done right, it's challenging because there's a lot going on for our clients, and we realize that. But if it's done properly, it's not that bad, other than the time consuming, and right, you're trying to do a million things. So proper planning and scheduling appropriately, right? You want to evaluate your procedures and your future needs. You always want to make sure that you're having backups and storage somewhere and backing up your data regularly. And then the timing and anything with date sensitivity, in particular payroll. You know, when do we run our last payroll and our first payroll of the next year? And then file maintenance is optional. Perform data cleanup tasks, remove or archive history, which Julie talked about. Do we need to inactivate or delete accounts, vendors, customers, items, employees? Run the reconcile procedures in the following order. You should do sales order first, purchase order next, and then inventory. That's if you're doing reconcile. All right, next slide. There's a sequence also. So this is changed. There actually is a year-end process in sales and purchase order now. It doesn't do a lot, but there is. It should be under your utilities. So it depends what version you're on. If you're on more current versions, it's going to be there. If you're not, it wasn't there. Inventory control after sales and purchasing. Receivables, then payables, then fixed assets, then GL, and then your payroll. That should be the order if you have all of those that you do that in. And the sequence is important. And then next, if you go to the next slide, if you perform period end procedures monthly, there usually are not additional steps required. And period end procedures would be reconciling sales documents, removing completed sales documents. That's where you move some of those out to history. You want to be careful with your dating when you do that. You don't want to be removing current things. Print reports as needed. So your SOP document analysis type reports, your inventory sales report, sales transaction history, serial or lot history, if they apply. And then the next thing we would look at is purchase order. If you perform period end procedures, again, you're going to not have these steps. The period end procedures would be reconcile the purchasing documents. Remove completed purchase orders, which is important. So those are purchase orders that have closed. GP does not like automatically move them into a history. So depending where you look in the software and screens, it might have it that it's an open instead of historical when it's really done. Print month-end reports. So received not invoiced is a big report if you're using purchase order. It's a three-way match. So, right, it's the PO itself, it's then the receipt, and then the invoice. And a lot of times I have seen it over the years be really messy for some of our clients. It's something you should run on a regular basis. The canned report does take quite a bit to run. And most of the time, usually the biggest error that I find there is that it wasn't invoiced through purchase order, right? Somebody was in a hurry, and rather than do the match, they just did an AP invoice. So it actually got paid and taken care of, but it's never going to fall off that that received not invoice report without doing an edit PO and closing the document. Which is purchase order status is another report to look at. And then there's actually a shipment/invoice matching activity that matches right that shipment receipt and the invoice, and then receiving transactions history. Next document, inventory control. So you want to make sure that all your transactions for the year are posted. Then you want to reconcile inventory quantities. Complete a physical inventory count and post your adjustments. This is usually a big deal to a lot of companies. And then you want to print other additional reports such as stock status, purchase receipts, turnover, transaction history, any serial or lot information, and then possibly your historical inventory stock status and inventory trial balance reports. Make a backup. Then you close the inventory fiscal year and close make sure all the fiscal periods for inventory are actually closed. Okay, next. Receivables management is date sensitive in certain areas. So receivables management process, it updates several tables that track the customer data. It's important for organizations to use the following items: smart list objects, receivable management summary reports, amounts since last close, that's a view in the customer summary window. To ensure accuracy of the data displayed, right, customer smart list objects, receivable management summary. Recommend you close the year prior to entering transactions for the new year. That's the key takeaway from that. And make sure you're running, it's not on there, but your aging is up to date. Right, there's only the current bucket and prior buckets. And we'll talk about that in a minute here. Post all the sales and receivable transactions for the year. Make a pre-year-end closing backup. Close the year. Note if your calendar and fiscal year are the same, select all in the year-end closing window. This option moves year-to-date to the last year bucket, right? And then the current year would be new. Close your sales series fiscal periods. That's optional. Usually I recommend you close them all. You can always open them if you have a transaction that has to hit back in there, and close the tax year. Next slide. So now we're going to talk about the same thing in the payables area. So also date sensitive, same reason, you have buckets. It's the same type of reports we just went over and the same methodology. So we can go to the next slide. The reports are a little bit different here. So post all purchasing and payable transactions for the year. Print the historical trial balance. Print your vendor period analysis reports. Make a backup named pre-edit 1099 edits. Verify the 1099 info and edit if required. And then just a note there, remember 2 new 1099 miscellaneous in GP 2018. Only if you apply the year-end updates. You could still print the 1099 NEC without updated pre-printed forms. If you were on last year's, the only point is you could get away without an update if you change the year-end report writer and change the report. But again, we normally recommend you be on the latest and the modern life cycle. Print 1099 statements. You can do it anytime before or after the year-end close. Make a backup and label it like pre-year-end. Close the year, and again, select all if your both calendar and fiscal year are the same. Close the purchasing series periods, and close the tax year if you haven't closed it yet. All right, that's payables. We'll go to the next slide. Fixed assets. So yes, fixed assets, for those of you that do have it, have a year end. So you want to make sure that payables is done first. You want to enter all fixed asset transactions for the current year. Make sure they're entered. Depreciate the assets through the last day of the current fiscal year. Perform your GL posting routine. Normally you should do this unless you're bypassing that and manually making entries. Print the fixed asset year-end reports for the current year. Verify the fixed asset calendar build. So that just tells you what your current year is. Verify the quarters are set up. Make a backup. So you want to set up the next year. Make a backup and perform the closing routine on fixed assets. Also, there are some smart lists. I do not, and I've said this forever, I do not love some of the canned reports that GP has for fixed assets. If you're in need of assistance with a fixed asset smart list report, I can typically build that in 2 to 4 hours maximum, and it'll have pretty much most of the information you need on it. I've done this for several clients of ours, and they use that exclusively instead of most of the canned reports. Okay, next slide.
And Mike, that would just be a support case or contacting your CSM?
Yeah, I would say contact your CSM, and then because I don't know that everybody knows that, I can teach somebody, and I'd even teach clients how to do it. So I would route it to me first because they're really quick, and I have no problem teaching clients. If I can teach them how to do this, they can build other reports off of that for depreciation and fixed assets. But I like it better than some of the canned reports that are there. It's easier for them to get into Excel, and if they're giving it to their accountants, to be able to do that. That's why I created that. So good question, Julie. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
The next slide. General ledger. So you want to complete the posting procedures and closing procedures for all the other modules, including fixed assets, everything but payroll. Post the final adjusting entries in GL. And you actually want all your payroll entries done. You just don't want to close payroll. Post the final adjusting entries in GL. And this is very important, and it's why it's highlighted. Create a smart list to verify the posting type of each account. The reason for that is when people make accounts sometimes, they just forget to change it. And I can't tell you how many support cases I have had, there have been a lot over the years, where something's not right with their year-end close, and what it winds up being is somebody set up an account wrong. And when they notice it, is right, it should have been a PL account, but it rolled over into the new year. It was a balance sheet account by mistake. Or it should have been a balance sheet account and it was a P&L and it disappeared. So very important to run a smart list that verifies, and then you verify the posting type. Close the last period of the fiscal year. Usually I recommend doing that. You can always open it back up if you need to. Perform file maintenance on the financial series. That's optional. verify settings for history and retained earnings in the GL setup window. That's important. You want to make sure you're having the number of years you want retained, and then make a pre-end year-end backup. The next slide. Print a final detailed trial balance report. Print the year-end financials. In FRX pretty much is not around, but I know some people still have it, which is why it's on there, or management reporter. Set up the new fiscal year. Close the prior year and close all the periods for all the series. Adjust budget figures for the new year and print your financial statements if you have new year budget in your report, and then make a post year-end backup. Okay, next slide. So now this is a recap of year-end Microsoft resources, and this is actually talking about the blog series. So you'll see the dates have pretty much all passed, but all that means is that if you go out to the blog link, these blogs are all out there and completed. And again, this is from Terry Healy. She's a senior escalation engineer at Microsoft. She's been doing stuff for she's passionate as well, been doing stuff for the GP community forever, and is a great resource for everybody. All right, next slide. Dynamics GP Resource Directory. So that offers GP resources. It has some various different things. Customer source, for those of you that remember back that far, because it's been gone for a little bit now, is kind of gone. This gets you some other links to support downloads, documentation, and user guides. All right, next slide. Okay, if you don't use GP payroll, you probably can leave, because that's what we're going to go over next, but we are going to have a Q&A. So if you can stick around, maybe you want to stick around.
Yeah, so we'll cover payroll now. If you'd like to stick around for the Q&A session at the end, we'd love to have you. And then we'll start with payroll.
I'm going to go through payroll pretty quick. So,
yep.
All right, payroll year end. So, verify you have the latest 2024 payroll tax updates. Right, and you want those installed. That's 2024, not 2025, so that you have everything right. Create the year-end file as a test. Verify your W-2s, 1099s, remove the year-end file, complete all your payroll runs for 2024, complete all monthly, quarterly payroll period end for the current year, make a backup of your company, and label the data pre-year-end wage file, create a year-end file using payroll year-end close, again, make a backup of your company for post-year-end wage, print the W-2s and 1099s, and next slide, and then print and email the W-2 statements or transmittals, create the electronic file for W-2, and it just walks through all these things. And then important, set up your 2025 fiscal periods and close, that actually should be 2024 periods for payroll. And then update to 2025 payroll tax tables and start processing 2025 payrolls. Okay, next slide. Tax table updates. There should be a release coming this month for the 2025 tables. The second release will be mid-January. FICA limit is now up to 176,100. Medicare, the 0.9 extra is for over 200,000. I don't know what the state is doing yet. And I will tell you something somebody told me at a webinar once related to accounting. And who the heck is FICA and why does he want all my money anyways? And we'll move on next to the next slide. January 31st, 2025 for employees and IRS and SSA, that's what's due. February 28th is the ACA deadline, March 31st, ACA for electronic filing. Next. That's just the filing requirements again, 2024 and later, it's 10 W-2s. The next slide. And TINs can be truncated on recipient copies, only copy B. This just walks through for that. Never truncate your EIN. And it just talks about the masks that are in place. Next slide. Self-service checklist. This walks through that. You want to make sure that you have your future benefits. If you have any new benefits, your open enrollment period, review your enrollments, complete your final pay of 2024, and then activate your future effective benefits, post your enrollments, review your benefits, and then begin your 2025 payrolls. Next slide. Other items prior to your first run of 2025, right? Employee accounts and splits, if there's an FTE manager, employee positions. So this is more related to the HR piece of payroll. Enhanced retirement plans, max contributions for 2025. It's up to $23,500. 401k, including Roth IRA, catch-up amounts are $7,500 over $23,500. Simple IRA is $3,500 on amounts over $16,500 limit. Roth IRA $1,000 on amounts over $7,000, and then 403bs $7,500 on compensation over $23,500. So those all should be current. I had checked those with the IRS website actually. Next, review your inputted income. So this talks about group life insurance coverage in excess of $50,000, educational assistance over $5,250, dependent care in excess of $5,000. Adoption assistance right now is still exempt from tax withholding, but not Social Security or Medicare. And then special attention to highly compensated individuals for tax exempt fringe. So I list the amounts in 2024 and 2025. And then next slide. So integrity data, products, checklist, so other items, right? Employee email suite, comprehensive leave manager and PTO, advanced HR and payroll extension. You should check with integrity. I think that's a link there. And then this is all important before your first pay run. Actually, it should say 2025. Next. Determine your applicable large employer status, measure part-time and variable, offer coverage. So this is all pretty much self-explanatory and it has some dates. And then that was for ACA. Next slide. And here's some links to updates. And Julie, can you go to that one other document that I had on payroll?
Yep.
So this is information that we can get to you as well. So the key things are printing the 2024 statements before processing your 25 pay runs. That's kind of a checklist. And then if you scroll down more, Julie, processing 2025 pay runs before printing your 2024 statements. So there's two scenarios you could have. You just want to be careful and make sure you go through steps on which way you want to do it. And those steps should be helpful. Okay, Julie, we can go back to the other document.
Okay.
The slide deck.
Yep.
All right. And then I think there might be one more slide after this. I don't remember. Yep. Yep, so there's some other articles. And then key points. There's also the year-end wage file is in the following tables: UPR 10100 for those more technical through UPR 10107. There's a year-end wage report. You can edit and print your W-2s. You can create the electronic file, which is W200, 005, and 006. Prior to processing pay runs in the new year, you want to install the payroll tax updates. You can also do it manually, but you really are better off installing updates. And then that's where it says downloads and updates manual. The next slide.
And now that brings us to the Q&A.
We got about 9 minutes for Q&A, which is what I wanted to leave some time in case anyone had questions. If not, if you have any issues, questions, concerns about your year end, please do not hesitate to reach out to your CSMs. Support, if you feel it's a support case. We are here to help.
Yes. So Mike, thinking about last year, 2023, are there some hiccups that you commonly see that people should be thinking about as they're processing their year end?
Only if you don't follow the procedures that we kind of outlined.
Okay.
Or if you go out of order.
Okay. We did have a question. How do you print the slides? Matt, is that related to the slides from today's presentation?
Yeah, it's our slide deck.
Yep. Okay. Those will be sent out to the attendee. The slides will be sent out. You are welcome. We have another something being typed into the chat. The other thing too is if you submitted a support case for your year-end close last year with Crestwood, then you can reach out to your CSM. We'll also be reaching out to you if you haven't heard from us yet this week or early next week. We will be following up with you to make sure that we get that scheduled again and connecting you with the support team to work through the process much like last year. If you are, there is another question in the Q&A, it looks like.
Can you see the Q&A, Julie?
I sure can. I don't see another question though. I may be missing something. So if you could read it, that would be great.
Yeah, I just sent it in the chat, but I can read it out. It says, in years past, I processed my year-end closing for PR before I moved to the other modules. Today, I'm hearing we must close all modules before we close payroll. What has changed?
You can do it differently. This is where when people do it this way, they don't have any problems. Some people, the old thing was we're going to hold stuff open. We have auditors. We have an audit that we're going to have, and then we need to make entries. There's one other thing that has changed. You don't need to do that. You can close everything. If you need to open the prior year, you can open it. There also is, if for some reason you do run into problems, I forgot to mention this, there is a reverse close for GL. Not for the other month, but for GL, you can reverse the year-end close and open it back up. That used to be a tool that only Microsoft had, and I had it because I knew some people there, but it used to be really like SQL and stuff. Now it actually is within the GP application under utilities. You actually can reverse the year-end close. So I don't know if it's been any different, and you can close it differently. We're just giving you best practices. where we don't see issues. So hopefully that answered the question.
All right. Now I am able to see the Q&A. Apologies for that. You are welcome, Katie. All right. And then, to Mike's point earlier, thinking about those that potentially are on 16, those types, an earlier version, we'll certainly want to work with our technical consultant, Brandon Richards, to ensure that you're upgraded potentially to 18.7. That would be more of a project if you're on a much older version. So when we think about the life cycle for GP, we do have some clients that maybe have had some issues not being able to upgrade for whatever reason over maybe the last couple of years. So we'd want to make sure that we thoroughly have a review of your system to ensure that you're on the modern life cycle, but for certain to look at your current version and determine if a project would be a more appropriate way to move to the upgrade. And then if you have a lot of customizations and those types of things, we would certainly also want you to reach out to your CSM just to make sure that we're working through the upgrade process in a safe way for your system to take all the functionality granted to you within the 18.7 release, but also making sure that we're not putting you in a position where you would assume it was be a support case. So again, it's always best to reach out to your CSM and then we'll work through that process. But in terms of knowing your GP version, for those of you who haven't had a chance to look for a while, it's available as soon as you log in on the bottom of the login screen, but it's also available in your GP at the top right-hand corner in where the question mark is. You'd be able to navigate to About GP and you'd see your version. So that would be the most important part, to know your version if you think you might be on an older one.
And since we're talking about life cycles, really, just to point out one other thing to keep in mind. For people, when they get to the point of wanting to move to another product, whether it's something we have, some of you were in our CEO, Jason Schaefer, gave a end of life GP webinar on Tuesday that covered a lot of things. But one of the other things to keep in mind is we know GP. Me personally, I know the data tables and where your data resides and how it's supposed to look outside of customizations. A lot of times you can have data that's 2 or 3 years old and you may have had errors here and there that people bypass, and you have data issues. And although on some of the products we may have a tool that we can run and look at it, we can always, without a lot of time, typically help you clean up your data. Right? I can think of some SQL scripts and things that I would do that aren't presently existing that wouldn't take that long to do. That would check to, like, say, make sure your AP data was not out of whack, and that would mean like something that you have full, complete records, that it's not missing. A lot of times that'll wind up as a support case with us and we'll fix it, but sometimes it really isn't apparent if it's not affecting any balances, but it would affect you no matter what you're moving to, whether it would be BC or Acumatica that we have, or whether it would be something totally different. Somebody's got to clean up the data, and we know GP the best, and we can help you with that as well. Just another thing to keep in mind. Really didn't pertain to this, but when we were on the subject of life cycle, it came to mind. Just remember, we're here to help.
Yes. So we're just about at time now. So if there are any questions that you didn't get answered, again, please reach out to your CSM, either me or Nick or Heather. If you think, potentially some of the smart lists that Mike was talking about, that would be something else you could reach out to us about. And then, as always, the support portal is a key spot for you to be submitting any cases that you have. If you need to have your access reset for the support portal, please again reach out to your CSM and we'll make sure you have everything you need. We will be sending out the slides to the attendees after this, so you'll be able to access the links that were provided. If there aren't any other questions or items, we can certainly let you go. Chloe, am I missing something?
No, I think we're good to go for today.
Okay.
No,
Awesome.
I would just like to say thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, and we
Yes.
appreciate you.
Yes. Thank you. Well said, Mike. All right. Happy
Everyone have a
holidays. If we
good
don't
rest
have a
of the
chance
week.
to connect with you yet in December, we look forward to connecting with you in the new year.